Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jessica Cole. I am a team member with U.S. Digital Response, as well as a volunteer with the Neighbor Express project, which spun out of U.S. Digital Response. And we were here today to launch a panel series called Open Resource. The goal of this panel series is to be able to share common challenges that governments are having during COVID-19, and to share some of the solutions that they came up with in ways that might be shareable among others. So I am fortunate to be joined by several of the other people who have been involved in a particular project, the Neighbor Express project with U.S. Digital Response, and I'll introduce them in a moment. First, I would just like to thank everyone for being here and let you know that as a participant, if you're watching this streaming live, you have the ability to comment your questions, and those will all flow up to us for an open Q&A period at the tail end of this hour. So please, by all means, if you have any questions, we are here because in the midst of what is a particularly challenging and urgent time, we have found some ways in order to make things brighter for our communities, more collaborative for our communities, and we want to have that discussion with you and help you with the advice and tips that we've learned. So that being said, I'd love to go around the room and just share a little bit of introductions from everybody who is on the panel today. Harsha, would you mind starting us off?
Good afternoon. My name is Harsha Malajusula. I'm the Chief Data Officer for the City of Paterson. I work for Mayor Andre Saya. As the CDO, my main responsibility is to improve data governance and analytics in Paterson, but I also manage the Neighbor Express program, and that's why I'm here. And I look forward to this discussion. Thank you.
Caitlin, would you mind following?
Sure. I'm Caitlin Sly. I'm the Executive Director of Meals on Wheels Diablo region, and we are a senior service serving organization that provides meals, companionship, and other fall prevention, other safety services to seniors throughout Contra Costa County.
And speaking of Contra Costa County, let's go to Mayor McGallion over there.
All right, thanks so much. Thank you for having me. My name is Tim McGallion. I'm mayor for the City of Concord in California, out here on the West Coast. And the City of Concord is just located east of San Francisco and Oakland. We're a suburb of kind of those two communities. We're about 130,000 strong. We're actually the largest city in Contra Costa County, and home to a large amount of office and retail throughout the region. And overall, of course, we'll get into more of the COVID responses and the things we've done. But very excited to be talking here with Jessica and also to see what the City of Paterson has done, very similar to what we've done about the response, the digital response to helping our residents.
Wonderful. And Mayor Saya, would you mind sharing your perspective and your introduction? Oh, we'll just unmute you for one moment. There we go.
Oh. Let's try that again. Good afternoon. My name is Andre Saya. I am the proud mayor of the historic city of Paterson, which is the birthplace of the American Industrial Revolution, founded by none other than Alexander Hamilton, made famous by Lin-Manuel Miranda in the Broadway musical. And Paterson, we have the second largest waterfall east of the Mississippi, second only to Niagara. So that's why we rebranded our city. Great falls, great food, great future. And Harsha knows all about the great food because he does like hummus and he likes burritos as well. So we're featured twice in the New York Times during this pandemic. One, our fire department for having the foresight to order enough personal protection equipment. And then second, because of our contact tracing team, it made national headlines. And of course, during the pandemic, we had an issue with voter fraud, and Donald Trump tweeted about us twice and talked about us twice in different announcements. But nevertheless, Paterson has managed to weather the storm thus far. And we owe a lot to Harsha and his leadership, particularly with the Neighbor Express program.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So to give those of you context who are tuning in, the partnerships that we had here are, and my role is I'm a member and a volunteer with an organization called U.S. Digital Response. We pair pro bono experienced technologists with governments just like these two who raise their hands and are asking for help in reacting to COVID-19 when it emerged. And so we came together in order to help them along with a lot of other collaborations they were doing within their communities from a technological standpoint. What we're here today to talk about is, well, government alone had a lot to deal with when we first started experiencing all of the surge in demand and needs in our communities as a result of COVID-19. Many governments around the country got really creative in that moment and decided to tap into other resources that already exist in their communities, the nonprofits, the volunteers who reached out their hands to help, other things that had existed already, mutual aid networks and others, and use them to actually respond much more quickly than they otherwise could to the needs that they were seeing. The two cities and regions that you're seeing here today were uniquely good at responding in these moments very quickly to the needs of their community. So we want to take a moment to actually share their story, share a little bit more about what it took for them to get programs up and running, like Neighbor Express, which was a program where individual neighbors could volunteer to bring necessary goods to their fellow neighbors in need who were homebound or particularly vulnerable or needing to isolate because of COVID-19. And we'll then zoom out from there to talk more generally about what it takes as a city or nonprofit or volunteer leader to connect up with your government so that you can actually get more than you otherwise would be able to get just working alone. So with that as context, I'd actually love to go back once more to each of the two mayors to give a little bit of the perspective. I know it feels like it has been so long and so short all at the same time, but if you could take us back to where you were in mid-March in your community in terms of the needs that you were seeing and the way that you were seeing your community starting to react. And if we could start with Concord as an example.
Sure. Thank you. So, we take back, like you said, it feels like a lifetime ago just to March and all the things that happened. And of course, everything hits. And the first thing you start figuring out is, and that's where Caitlin comes in with Meals on Wheels. You look to your nonprofit partners and everybody that needs to be around your table to figure out how we're going to move forward. And you start figuring out and assessing needs, right? And of course, the biggest need that all immediately comes to mind is, of course, food. And making sure that those that have what they need and who are the agencies and resources that can all make this happen. And so, we were able to go through and find out that while Caitlin has always consistently, and Meals on Wheels has always consistently been able to deliver food, especially to homebound seniors, we had a number of other populations that we had to kind of get figured out as well. So the kids that were home, how do we get them food through Mount Diablo Unified and the grab and go? The rest of the mainstream population that could leave the house, we made sure that we had different kind of meal pickups and working with the food bank. But then that last element was the more senior population, and we kind of set it to where anybody over the age of 60 who was homebound that felt that they were uncomfortable going out, we were going to provide some kind of service for them. So not just, there was the one side of the program, which was food. The other, of course, was the helping hands. The nice part, though, is that working with a group like Meals on Wheels, we knew they could be our air traffic controller to be able to kind of figure a lot of this out. And they had some basic systems in place. But of course, we had a gap in the ability to bring people in. And so the deal is of course, the intake system for Meals on Wheels is a much larger, robust process. From our side, we needed to do something immediately, and we needed to scale it within a week to 2 weeks. And so that part I'm just so excited about, because I was looking at my timeline of when things started. And so literally I put down March 16th was the first day I started to reach out, and Caitlin and I are thinking about some different things. We started putting all the pieces together and said, okay, well, you can do the delivery. You know how to take care of that on the back end. We're going to go to Mount Diablo Unified. They have a central kitchen. They're going to source our meals. Great. We were able to get money, allocated literally the following day on the 17th from the city budget in order to make this entire thing launch. But then on the 16th, I also reached out to a friend of mine, my friend John Charisma. He actually is an executive over at Apple. And I said, John, I need a technology solution to do X. Great. I know this fantastic group. It's called Code for America, and Jennifer Polka. Okay. Hey, Jennifer knew exactly. She said, Jennifer then ended up getting me in contact with Jessica at US Digital Response literally the next day. And that we're talking Tuesday. By the end of the week, we already had Neighbor Express stood up, ready to go. And we launched it on basically Friday, March 20th to bring our first people into the program over the weekend. And we were delivering meals on March 23rd. So 1 full week turnaround from start to finish to stand something up that most people that make their head spin. And it really just came down to knowing, we know there's a technology solution. It can be done very, very quickly. You just need to know who to ask. And sometimes you don't always have to understand every finite detail, but there are really good people out there that know how to stand this stuff overnight. And so watching that come together was just an amazing experience. Because, I mean, of course, it was long hours. It was back and forth, tweaking some language on websites, making sure that we had kind of working through our systems, including setting up a call center, right? So it's not just people inputting data. You've got seniors who don't necessarily know how to interact with the computer properly. So we ended up setting up an entire call center. And luckily, I have our VIPs through our police department, our volunteer and police services people. Most of them are over the age of 60 or even 70, and they're not able to go out, but they still wanted a function to be able to help. So we said, perfect. You stay home. You have now become our call center. So we ended up having 7 to 10 people throughout our community that were able to take those calls. They knew how to get on the computer, put in that information, and they get everybody connected literally within a very, very short period of time. And the program has been running successfully ever since. So it's just something that's so exciting in terms of what that partnership looked like, but how that ability to turn around so quickly was so effective.
Thank you for that summary. It was actually a whirlwind to really relive and remember what happened in March. What about in Paterson? What were you seeing as you reorganized in that mid-March time period? What was happening on that side?
So March 16th bears significance for Paterson as well, because it was the first day that I issued an executive order closing all non-essential businesses so that we could protect Patersonians. And quite frankly, Paterson was hit hard because we are the second most densely populated city in the United States. New York is first as the most densely populated of any municipality with 100,000 or more people. And at its peak, we had on April 16th, we had 262 confirmed COVID-19 cases. This past Sunday, we had 2. So we're slowly flattening the curve. And what we wanted to focus on, and we were hyper focused on doing it, was our older adults, because we know they're at risk. So initially we went to our supermarkets and we created exclusive hours for them to shop. But then a number of them expressed concern and some trepidation relative to leaving their homes. So what we did was we looked to Harsha, our chief data officer, and he reached out to Neighbor Express. We had volunteers come in droves and say, look, how do we help? We want to serve. And a number of them are educators, so they weren't in school because they missed out about on a third of the school year. So they came in, they volunteered, and a lot of seniors were served. We also had a program where we partnered with the Community Food Bank of New Jersey and United Way, where we provided 1,500 meals a week to senior citizens. Now we're up to 3,000 meals a week for those seniors. So we're doing everything we can to accommodate those individuals that are at risk, those that have the comorbidities, and we want to make it as convenient as possible. And we are so encouraged that Neighbor Express has been so successful in our city that we're expanding it to do wellness checks. Next week, we'll be announcing on the leadership of Harsha, our chief data officer, that we're going to have volunteers periodically checking in with senior citizens on their health and well-being. So we're really encouraged that this program is working for Paterson and our older adults.
Thanks so much. And I would love to actually turn to Caitlin and Harsha for a minute. So I think now, in hindsight, it's really easy for us to sit there and say, thank goodness we tried this program. We did so much with it. But in the moment, what the two of you received from your respective physicians was someone coming to you saying, can you try something that's never been done before? Can you do it really fast? And can you do it in coordination with a bunch of volunteers? So could you just share a little bit about your perspective from when you first heard about that idea and how you were feeling and thinking about it at the time? Go ahead, Harsha.
So I can go ahead. Thanks, Jessica. So we knew there was an unmet need in our community. Our Health and Human Services Division would run a program where they would actually take out seniors for grocery shopping. And once COVID-19 happened, they had to cancel that program. And our Health and Human Services Director, Roshan Castillo, came to me and she said, we can't run this program anymore. And I'm scared that we have this population of seniors who are homebound and are now at a high risk for food insecurity. When I reached out to Neighbor Express, I was able to quickly understand the platform. I was able to understand the technology. And I realized quickly that initially, during the first few weeks, I would probably be the person who would be handling the back end operations of Neighbor Express. Our health division had a list of trusted volunteers that we could depend on. So we quickly reached out to those volunteers and told them what this program was. Our mayor has relationships with supermarkets in town, and we were able to quickly bring them aboard. And I think we were the first city that actually started this program as a pilot program. We ran this as a pilot just so that we made sure, like, if we saw any kinks in the program, we could address them during the pilot and then expand it to the entire city. Our Health and Human Services division had relationships with private senior residences in the city, and I was able to convince one building to come on board, and we ran a pilot for about a week. And when we realized that yes, this program is working as it is supposed to, there were no technological issues, and we had interest both from volunteers and from our seniors, we were then able to quickly expand it to the entire city. The mayor had previously mentioned the date of April 16th, where we had 262 cases in the city. We also launched Neighbor Express on that same week. Uh, so that is how, like, we rolled out.
What about you, Caitlin?
Oh, for us, it is hard to think back to that time because it does feel like a century ago. But everything that Mayor McGallion described is absolutely accurate. It was a complete whirlwind. That week, when he came to me and said, we need to stand this up and we're going to serve 1,000 seniors by next week, my head did spin, and so did my staff's. But he pushed me, and I give him credit because it worked, and it was a huge unmet need, and it's still going today. At that point, because March 16th was when our county went into shelter in place. And so at that point, we had two issues at Meals on Wheels. We had an abundance of volunteers that were reaching out to us. These are folks that are typically, professionals, work full time, but they're home. They're working from home, and they need to get out of the house to do something. They wanted to give back to their community. We also had a newly homebound group of seniors. So typically, the seniors that we serve are homebound because of medical issues, physical ailments, that kind of thing. But the new seniors that we were seeing are people that typically can go grocery shopping for themselves. They can cook their own meals. They just were at risk. And we did not have a mechanism for how to deal with that influx. We knew that our normal way of doing things had to change, and it had to change quickly. And we knew that going through our typical government-funded meals for this particular group in Concord was not going to work. But we also knew that we had an idea, or one of my staff had the idea, I won't take credit for it, that this friendly helper idea of putting volunteers with seniors that needed errands run for them was something that we wanted to do anyway. And here was the perfect opportunity to pilot it. So we were able to kind of create a synergy through Neighbor Express of these volunteers that wanted something to do, a group of seniors that needed their help. And at our nonprofit, we're small. We have a small budget. We never could have stood up a technology option that quickly. So for us, it was amazing to have the Neighbor Express team be able to do that for us, because the way the technology works, you were actually able to drag and drop volunteer matches together, and you were able to get inquiries in real time. And it just made everything so much faster that it really had a wonderful impact on the people we serve. And I have to say, we're definitely not just serving the seniors in need of nutrition. We're serving the volunteers too. it was good for their mental health to get out of the house and to interact and feel like they were giving back, because they were giving back. And so it really, although we did have to have long hours and our heads were spinning and sometimes tearing our hair out for that first week, it ended up having a huge impact on the people we serve.
And that actually brings up a good point. So you mentioned kind of this volunteer element of this. So for those who are listening, who might be a little bit less familiar with exactly what happened in these cities, let me just zoom out for a minute and explain a little bit more.
I told them.
And I know Mayor Saya has to pop in or pop out for momentarily. I know that he might have to leave at some portion during the conversation. So if you have follow-up questions for him, let us know and we will follow up with him after the fact. But we thank him for being part of this for however long he's able to join us. So zooming out, fundamentally what Neighbor Express was a program that allowed the cities that were offering it to have volunteers raise their hands on one half of a marketplace and say, I am willing to help my community. And then on the other hand, for people who were in need of things, which might be food and food deliveries, it might be medication donations or pickups, it might be wellness checks. In one of our cities, they actually created activity kits to drop off for people who were stuck at home to make sure that they could feel welcome and taken care of while they were stuck at home. It could be any of those, but it gave both parties a way to raise their hands through just a simple website that then had 2 forms on it, really that simple, as well as a phone number for people to call in and actually engage with that service. And then on the back end of things, it was a very simple, relatively simple kind of matchmaking view that allowed people like the volunteers and staff on Harsh's team and Caitlin's team to actually look at who had signed up, look at the requests that were coming in, and do some very quick matchmaking that we used technology to actually make that a little simpler for them. So there are a couple of things of note on that front. One, this wasn't rocket science when it came to technology. It took thought. It took a level of making sure things were accessible using web design standards, et cetera. But fundamentally, you're looking at a kind of responsive, thoughtful website with forms that then feeds into a back end that allows people to view and then take a series of actions on that side. And while we are sharing this story here, we are sharing it on behalf of many other people. So I myself, for example, can speak from Neighbor Express's side and US Digital Response's side, but for every time that I'm speaking, you can imagine a team of 12 to 15 people who are volunteers from around the country who help to work on Neighbor Express from those perspectives. Similarly, I know for everybody who's sitting in every one of these seats, we have other staff members and other creative people who gave up their time and volunteers in the communities who gave up their time to make this all work. So we are some voices as part of a much broader collaboration that came about. And what everyone watching this should know is that Neighbor Express is one example of how this happens. There are many other examples like this of mutual aid networks being built upon in many other communities, using technology to make them scale at a time of unprecedented need. So that is a little bit of context. Go ahead.
Can I jump in here too? The one thing that I want to mention in terms of the whole, how did it come to be in some cases, and I think this becomes a lot of people's limiting factors on things, is thinking that they don't know enough about technology. And so they kind of shut down. They don't think that there's maybe a way to do something. And so that's kind of where my perspective was, I don't know how to code that stuff. But I know that there is a solution out there if I ask for it. And there are a lot of incredible people that have stood things up overnight. And luckily I have enough friends and I've seen the different projects they've worked on. And I'm like, if I know you can do that, I'm pretty sure you can do something this simple over here too in some cases. It's just knowing how to ask for it as well and not be afraid to ask for it and just start reaching out to people. And so I think that's kind of how a lot of this all came to be, instead of kind of just being afraid going, oh, I don't know if we can do this. And then you're trying to somehow get bogged down by maybe a city process. Instead, it was like, no, let's go beyond our 4 walls that doesn't have the expertise to be able to do something maybe this quickly and solve the problem. So that's where I want to make sure that's well understood. It's okay to go beyond your walls and go ask people for help.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we see is, in your case, the way that you were able to raise your hand and ask for help was by reaching out to US Digital Response, which was an organization that basically allows governments to raise their hand and say, match me with some experienced techies, please, for kind of thoughtful collaboration. There are many other organizations, local Code for America brigades, people who might be volunteering in your communities who are stepping up to offer similar services. So when you think about that, when you have people who are raising their hands saying, we'd like to help, or nonprofits who are raising their hands saying, we'd like to help you, how do you think about that? How do you actually figure out the right places to plug them in so that they can be helpful and they can do meaningful work on behalf of a city?
So from our standpoint, it's understanding like how those things will interact, right? Now, it does take a little bit level of, do you understand technology well enough to maybe understand where they're going with something and not be afraid to think that maybe it actually might take hold, become a cost savings, become a staff doubler that allows me to do more and reach out to more, because in a lot of cases, I mean, look what COVID has done to the city's budgets. They have shrunk our budgets, our revenues are, you know, not what they used to be even 4 months ago. And so these are those creative things that you really have to kind of push beyond your comfort zone to figure out what's next. And so, yeah, you need to be able to kind of say, okay, let's go through it. Let's see what this can do. And not be afraid of kind of going, well, there's all these processes, all these things, and kind of throwing up walls and barriers. And so that's the part that has to just kind of go out the window right now. And as a result, look what it's done and how our general cities are having to operate, how our nonprofits are working with each other. Everybody is just constantly now communicating a much different way than we ever have before.
And I think that's the thing that I would emphasize too, is constant communication. You know, in other roles, I have worked on disaster response, and that's always the key, is the constant communication. And we found that really easy with this solution. With Neighbor Express and the Neighbor Express team, it's not like the website was stood up and was perfect on the first day. We were constantly tweaking it and making it better and changing the way our staff saw it on the back end. And the team at Neighbor Express was so receptive to that. And I was able to push my staff to be willing to give that feedback in real time. That they're not being critical, they're communicating what they need. And so I think it really was the communication between, in our case, myself, Mayor McGallion, the school district. I can't say enough about Mount Diablo Unified School District, who was providing the meals. They were a dream to work with. And that cross-sector collaboration. I mean, we serve seniors. I never thought we'd be partnering with the school district, but that's what came out of this.
Harsha, what about when you were thinking about a program like this in Paterson? Paterson's a different city. You had seen it work in Concord. At this point, Neighbor Express is up and running in 6 different cities and states, but there's always something a little bit unique about an individual place. So how did you think about standing up this kind of collaboration in Paterson specifically?
So in Paterson, especially with our senior community and our demographics, we wanted the program to be accessible. Accessibility meant that we were not just thinking about it in terms of technology. There is a digital divide, especially within the senior community. 55% of our population are Hispanic. So when we were setting up this website and thinking about accessibility, we were the first city that actually provided Spanish translations on our website. When we developed marketing materials in 4 languages: English, Spanish, Arabic, and Bengali. When we talk about collaborating with our nonprofits and our mutual aid networks, we have a mutual aid network that delivers 200 meals to seniors in our community. And when we were doing our outreach, the week before the launch, every meal that went out from the mutual aid network also had a Neighbor Express flyer included in the meal packet, so that seniors now knew that there was this program that is available that they can reach out to. We've also used a social media and the communication channels that the city has to communicate about the program. But I think for me, the biggest learning was the phone line. 98% of our calls come from the phone line. Seniors in our community actually appreciate the component of human interaction. So having that Google Voice line set up and then having an army of volunteers actually uh, talking with seniors, walking them through the program, and then taking in their orders and also checking in informally checking in with them was really crucial for the success of this program.
Can you talk about a little bit? I know in Paterson, one of the other things that you did that was pretty creative was reach out to some of your business owners within the community to get them involved with this program as well, which is yet another kind of entity that you're collaborating with. What is it like when you're actually coming at it from the city perspective, reaching out and saying, will you be part of this collaboration that we're putting together?
Yes, I think we've had like really strong partnerships with our business community to make this program a success. The city itself does not have many supermarkets. We have most of our residents typically shop at bodegas and corner stores, and in March and in early April, during the peak of the pandemic, there was a lot of price gouging in informal marketplaces. So when we were launching this program, we wanted to protect both our volunteers and our seniors. We wanted to protect our seniors by onboarding stores that we thought had the trust of the community. So we proactively reached out to stores and said, hey, like this is the program that we are going to run for homebound seniors. This is a unique opportunity for a local business to partner with the mayor's office and help serve a community that is at risk and in need. We also wanted to ensure that our seniors did not uh, fall or like were not susceptible to financial scams. So for each of the stores that we onboarded, we had a dedicated bookkeeper, and any payment transaction for the groceries that would happen between seniors and the store would go through this dedicated bookkeeper, and this information was proactively communicated to the seniors that this bookkeeper from the store will call you and ask for your like payment details. Please do not like give out your credit card information to any volunteer. No volunteer should be asking you for your credit card or payment information. That was really important. We also knew that a lot of our seniors used EBT cards when they were paying for their groceries. So all the stores that we onboarded, we made sure that they accept EBT cards because we knew that would be like really crucial to make this program successful. On the volunteer side, we wanted our volunteers to go into the store quickly and come out of the stores quickly because there were long lines outside of the stores, and that would mean they would have to like they might be exposed to a potential risk. So we negotiated with the stores where Neighbor Express volunteers were given a volunteer certificate, and they could show it at the store so that they had a special entrance into the store, and they also had a special checkout counter so that they could get into the store and get out of the store as quickly as possible. So these were like some of the unique ideas that we've brainstormed in partnership with our business community, and it's been like successful so far.
That gets at a really, I think, important point. I imagine you didn't have all of those innovations on day one. And
We did not.
what did you all learn over the course of doing this kind of Neighbor Express partnership work within your community?
I would say we learned that we are capable of meeting more needs than just food. So we were able to expand into picking up prescriptions and those other kinds of essential errands that our homebound seniors really needed during that time. But I think critical to that was setting expectations on both ends. So for the volunteers, you're not expected to go back to the grocery store and return the gallon of milk because the senior wanted a half gallon, those kinds of things. That's too much. We're only expecting you to make one trip. And then, on the seniors end too, this is what the volunteer can do. This is what they can't do. And so managing expectations, I think, was crucial to this. And again, we didn't know what expectations would exist until we got into it. So that was iterative as well on the website. where we were able to say, okay, people are requesting things that we're just not going to be able to do. Let's do some outlining of what this program is going to be and clearly define it.
So one of our learnings was, sorry, like if I can quickly jump in, I think one of the biggest learnings for me is that seniors are like really set in their shopping habits and their favorite stores. And the unique idea of Neighbor Express is gives seniors the choice. There are like a lot of programs that will deliver like boxes of pre-packed groceries and prepared meals to seniors. But with Neighbor Express, they have a choice and say on the groceries that they want delivered from the stores that they want them delivered from. So understanding that really helped us reaching out to stores that we initially did not think of should be part of this program and convincing them that uh, they should come on board because this would be not just good for the community but also an additional source of revenue for the store so that there is a business interest in the store to being part of the Neighbor Express platform.
So I'll just let people who are watching know that we're going to open it up for questions. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask the folks on this panel, please by all means drop them into the comments and they will come to us and then we will be able to address them over the next couple of moments. Before we jump into those questions, one that's top of mind for me is you all make this sound easy in some ways. What were some of the challenges when you were really thinking about launching something new amidst the pandemic across government, nonprofit, volunteer, in some cases private sector lines? What was hard about that?
So I'll start on that. I think it sounds funny to say that how you were saying, oh, it sounds easy. But there's also just the general mindset of just saying, but I know we can do it. And so kind of like even with Kate was saying, I knew that I was pushing her, but it also came down to like, I knew we could do it. And so there's no solution that's too big that we wouldn't have been able to handle in all of this. And it's just kind of knowing like, do I have the right partners around my table? And the answer was yes. And so that's what made it easy. Now, if you have people that don't know how to work together, now luckily, Caitlin and I have worked together even before she was at Meals on Wheels. So we already had a relationship, which helped us then launch this. And then we had other relationships with other people that tied into this program with the Mount Diablo Unified School District and the person that runs all the food programs over there. So those are the things, though, that the underlying piece to this is you have to have the community and the contacts and the people to be able to know how to quickly pull together in the time of an emergency and then like make it look like one and you're moving forward. And so, while the technology solution was a challenge, realistically, like Jessica, we talked to you every single day. We were able to go back very, very quickly. And I mean, including using other technology to help us manage this technology, right? It was like the Slack conversations that were happening throughout every hour of the day throughout that first few weeks. But it was just one of those things you just go, but that's what needs to be done, period. And so all those things are possible. It's just kind of knowing like, how are you going to address and attack a situation properly? And do you have the right people to make it work?
And while launching the new program, there will always be an unknown risk. But I think like here in Patterson, we felt this was a program that was much needed. And we had our faith in the Neighbor Express team, and we went ahead with the program. Like we've run into a few challenges. Like one of our biggest challenges initially was misinformation about the program. There was misinformation that the program would like shop for groceries for free. The idea there was so like during a certain week we received 200 calls on a daily basis because people uh, thought or were misinformed that they didn't have to like pay for the groceries but they could order groceries from the store. And like I was working with Anya, who was my Neighbor Express liaison for the program, and she was amazing. Like we were able to like brainstorm a solution. We switched our Google voice line into voicemail recording where we actually explained the entire program in both English and Spanish, so that people who were misinformed about the program when they called the phone line would actually hear the voicemail and understand how the program would work. And then they had an option to leave a voice message, and then a volunteer would call them back and take a delivery order. So that was a quick workaround for for a problem that we were initially overwhelmed with. So it was always great, like working with the Neighbor Express team to brainstorm ideas and like ensure that the program was agile enough to uh, address some of the challenges that we faced.
Caitlin, what about you? In terms of challenges, I know one thing that we've talked about in the past was that this asked your staff to do some things that they hadn't been asked to do in the past. As the kind of leader of an organization, thinking inward, what did challenges did that present?
Yeah, it presented because we had staff that previously worked on other types of programs that were essentially put on pause because of COVID. And so redeploying staff to something maybe they're not used to, maybe they're not comfortable with. And so I think that presented some challenges, although I have the best staff in the world and they just rolled up their sleeves and jumped right in. Specifically Casey and Eileen. I want to mention their names because they're the best. But there were some challenges around, somebody who's never done volunteer coordination. That is a totally different animal. And these were brand new volunteers who didn't know our organization, didn't know how we worked. And so I think, honestly, the volunteer coordination may have been one of the challenges. But we also have a volunteer coordination team here, and they were able to provide their expertise. So we got it all worked out. But there were things we had to work through, redeploying staff to different roles, and it gave them an opportunity to learn new skills, I think, too.
So I'll hop to a question from our audience. One of them is asking basically around volunteer engagement. So they're saying that, out of this group, we are experts in many things, but not all of us are necessarily the kind of leaders or experts on volunteer engagement. So could you speak a little bit on that perspective? How did kind of expertise in how to engage volunteers come into the conversation? Were there other people that you engaged to help you think about this who are not necessarily in the room right now?
Well, I would say that most nonprofits are pretty good at volunteer engagement. It's not all we do, but we have to be experts in volunteer engagement. And so I'm not the expert in volunteer engagement, but my team is. And so that's how we were able to make sure that piece wasn't missing. And they have their peers at other Meals on Wheels and other nonprofits, and so they were able to reach out for advice and help in that way.
And here in Paterson, we worked closely with our Health and Human Services Division, as well as United Way Passaic County, which is a nonprofit. And both of these organizations are experts in volunteer engagement. Our Health and Human Services, they run a variety of programs with volunteers to address issues with specific populations. One of the programs I did mention, they would run a program where they would drive seniors to grocery stores and help them with shopping. So our Health and Human Services Division already had a database of trusted volunteers who had previously volunteered with them for a variety of projects, and we were able to tap into that database and reach out to those volunteers. Similarly, United Way Passaic County has had a database of volunteers that were engaged with them, and they reached out to that database to help staff the phone line for Neighbor Express.
There was a little bit of a reuse of some of the volunteer staff that already existed, the knowledge that already existed. I can also say from the U.S. Digital Response side, one of the advantages to having a volunteer-driven organization that is in touch with so many different governments asking for help with so many different challenges, of which the kind of Neighbor Express food security and kind of homebound senior security is just one of them, is that we were often in touch with many others who from across the country who were able to share their perspective and expertise on this as well. So while the team was working with Concord, with Paterson, with some of our other partners, we were hearing from state level departments of aging who were telling us, here's best practice right now under COVID-19 for how to engage with both volunteers and with seniors. And that actually transitions us to another question that we received, which was around what does and doesn't work when communicating with the kind of more senior population who might be homebound and more vulnerable populations in general.
Yeah, I mean, it was great that we were involved in this, since we are a senior serving organization, and we're used to knowing their needs. Again, I'm actually relatively new to this role, so not me, my staff. They are experts in what it takes to communicate with seniors and what it takes to really serve their needs in a most meaningful way. And so while we did know that the website necessarily wasn't going to always be the best option for the seniors that needed help, it really was the best option for the volunteers. And so that's where the phone line was critical, and I was very grateful to the city for taking that part on, so that didn't fall on us and we could focus on the service delivery and the volunteer matching. But it was a lot of flyers that went out, very paper-based and phone-based once it came to making sure we were doing the matches correctly. And I will underscore that that's why it was important that volunteers came through us. So they went through our process of getting background checked and us screening them to make sure that we could trust them not to take advantage of our seniors, who are so often targeted for scams and so often vulnerable to that kind of thing. And there were even COVID specific scams that were going on at the time. So we really wanted to be able to protect our seniors and manage that relationship. And luckily, our name is pretty trusted in the local community. They know that if it has the Meals on Wheels Diablo region logo, or the person I'm talking to comes from Meals on Wheels Diablo region, it's trusted.
And that's why I want to jump in here and say that was also one of the reasons why it made for an easy fit to work with Meals on Wheels, just for that reason, because just like Caitlin mentioned, I had personally, beginning my entire council, we got a flood of people saying, we want to help. But it was like, okay, where do we send these people? But so to Caitlin's point, it was making sure that, okay, well, we need to bring people in. We need to at least kind of get them somewhat background check. We need to make sure that they are who they say they are, and then we can deploy volunteers. And so that seemed to be very, very effective, because while everybody's got great intentions, we literally got flooded with people that wanted to help. And so that really, really helped things along. And even on the phone banking side, setting that up was really helpful. Like even, Marcia said how you had to kind of do the pre-recorded message, let everybody know. Our team was doing the same thing. Okay, these are the expectations. These are what's going on. But also just having a chance to talk. I had a chance to catch up with a lot of our phone bank people, and they would say, yeah, I'd hear from this person. They'd call us once a week, and we'd talk and just to say hi and a little conversation, and they enjoyed that part too. So all these elements kind of all tied in together, kind of helped the volunteers feel truly connected with the group, and just kind of kept things going really well.
So if I can quickly add everything that Caitlin and the mayor mentioned, but like one thing that we did innovative was we did a Facebook Live event with Mayor Saya, where he was actually at a store 6 feet away from the volunteer who was actually shopping, and then also at the residence of a senior when the delivery was happening. And both of these videos actually showed how the program worked. And because our program was associated with the mayor's office, and the mayor was advocating strongly for the program on his social media channels, and we made these Facebook Live events. That helped us onboard a lot more seniors than we thought we would otherwise.
The other thing from a technology standpoint, which I think was something that we worked on with all of you, was making sure the website itself and the tools were following best practices when it came to accessibility, US web design standards, some of these other functionalities. And those were things that, again, at translations, those were things where, again, that was a kind of iterative process, working with the cities, working with others who were experiencing the website, learning where people got confused, and exactly like you said, Caitlin, going back and editing content in real time in partnership in order to make sure that we could make it better and better, because we learned a lot, not just on day one. So as we think about looking forward, I'm curious, did this experience change your perspective on what's possible?
So I'll start with saying no, but I also have a perspective that technology has basically made everything possible in a lot of cases, just knowing how to interact with it. And so, I kind of take it from that view. Now, for most of my colleagues, the answer would be absolutely yes, and we expose them to something that they never knew could be possible. It's just, again, it comes back to knowing who to ask, where to ask for help, and how to ask for the right things, and just knowing that there's a lot of really smart people out there that know how to put these tools together, that have already, in some cases, been doing it. You look at all the company databases and all the different CRM systems and all those tools that are out there, and all these are just minor tweaks of those type of things as you're trying to connect people, connect data, and figure out how to make it usable. And so it's one of those. It's there. It's just we need to figure out how to pull it in, and also make it to where it's scalable and it's cost effective and things like that too. But I always look at it just going, hey, it's possible. You just got to know how to ask for it.
I would definitely say yes. I mean, I moved to Paterson from a really big bureaucracy. So it took us 1 week to launch the program from the initial email that I sent to Jessica. So it gives me a lot of hope that municipalities can launch programs as quickly as nonprofits or startups can. So next time I'm in a room and someone tells me that the city cannot move that quickly, I have proof that this did happen and this should happen, especially during a pandemic, that we can move quickly and we can be agile as well.
And I would say yes. I knew I had the same mentality as Mayor McGallion, in that I knew it could happen. I didn't know it could happen in a week, and so that was impressive. But I would say too, what I didn't know about doing this is what it would also lead to. So we now have this relationship with the school district, and we have been refining our disaster plans at Meals on Wheels for a while. And so now I'm looking at them as, could that be a backup plan if our regular kitchen ever went down? And so we're having those conversations offline that wouldn't have happened other than this. And we're also looking at, wow, we did this pilot for this Friendly Helper program that we had been mulling over for a year or so and had never been able to get funding for. And now that we have a pilot and we have some evidence that it can work, we were just funded to expand it to other cities. And so those are some things that, during that week, I never would have thought 6 months from now or 5 months from now, however long it's been, other things that are great for your organization and are great for the people you serve are going to come.
How did this change your relationship with other entities within the city? So when you think about, you spoke to this a little bit, Caitlin, but for Harsha and Mayor McGallion, when you think about where your community is today, as we unfortunately maybe look at another wave or head into the fall versus where it's been in the past, how has this experience changed the relationship and your preparedness on that front as well?
So it's definitely helped us, and also knowing that because this tool is been set up, in some cases I am concerned about what is the next wave going to look like. and where are we going to respond next? And so that's where I think there's going to be some future conversations that are going to be around. Okay, we did this, but like we sunsetted the meal delivery program, but now it's like, okay, do we now need to continue that? But what else are we missing, and how can we use this same program, the same setup? And then are there other city departments and other groups, whether it be Park and Rec or some others, as we're trying to interact with people, just having a really efficient place to be able to kind of bring people to and get them connected and involved, because that's really what it was. It helped us really connect in a really, really seamless manner, all these different resources and people that we needed to make happen. So I can actually see us doing more over the course of the next few weeks, because I am concerned about kind of where this is going and what the long haul is going to be.
And for us in Patterson, this program, it did buy us trust, especially for the mayor's innovation team, which is a new team. A lot of our nonprofits were really excited about this program. And we are expanding this program. One thing that I'm really excited about is the pilot that we are launching next week with the Health Coalition of Passaic County. We are matching high school students with our seniors, where high school students will do wellness checks with our seniors over a period of 10 weeks. This is modeled along StoryCorps. So high school students will get to capture the lives of our seniors who've lived here for a long time, and also hopefully connect seniors to other resources that they might need. And that this partnership came into being because the Health Coalition of Passaic County reached out to us after they heard about the launch of Neighbor Express. So it's definitely, there is an excitement in the community about what's going to come next, and that we are being innovative and using agile platforms.
So this brings us to the lightning round period at the tail end of this panel. So I'm going to ask you two questions. The first is, we have a question from Anchorage that basically says, what would you have done earlier in the process if you launched in another city? Lightning round. Any thoughts?
Nothing. In a lot of cases, no. I mean, it worked exactly the way we hoped it would. And so the pre-planning components that USDR has already had in place, it allowed you to execute exactly the way you were designed to do. So that's what's so great about it. I mean, realistically, we launched and were able to stand this up in a week's time because you guys already knew how to make that work and how to execute on that. So everybody executed exactly the way they needed to. And so we really can't thank you enough for being able to have those resources in place. And it didn't actually take the pandemic for this to all of a sudden get created. You already had the foresight to know that these things need to be in place. And now we were able to move these into fruition when they really counted.
That cover it? Well, thank you. Second question and kind of final question for you all to close on. If people are asking you, what advice do you have for other cities, governments, communities who are thinking about either launching Neighbor Express, launching a different program, trying to try something new and collaborate during these times? What advice do you have for them?
My advice would be to just do it, especially with USDR and Neighbor Express. It's been a great privilege to be part of this partnership and provide essential services to our community. And in this time, you don't have to spend a lot of time thinking whether this is the right program or not. I mean, there is so much need.
Yeah, I think just try it. It can't hurt to try it. Call it a pilot. Try it on a small scale if you're worried about the impact. I think that with everything that's going on with COVID, whether you're a business or a nonprofit or a city, everybody's having to kind of reinvent things right now. And now is the time to be trying things. And they're not all going to work out. But that's okay, because you don't learn unless you try it. And engage partners, engage your nonprofit partners, your city partners, and your private partners. Because everybody has a different perspective and they're all going to help you in the long run.
And just to kind of wrap up, I'll just say it kind of comes back to Caitlin said try it, and I know there's a little hesitation there. So hopefully you also have some good nonprofit partners. You've got good people around the table to be able to make sure that you can help define a certain level of success. And so that part's helpful. That was comforting to me from the very beginning, of knowing who told me about the different services that were available. And then when we started to jump in, built confidence. And then the team that I was able to pull together also built confidence in order to execute. But you have to also kind of trust there are others out there that really know how to do this stuff very well. And it's okay to take that leap of faith, especially with technology. It can be scary and expensive. So maybe in some cases, working with USDR can also maybe help guide you through trying to figure out, maybe you don't need this, but this is really helpful, and this is something that can be executed at a cost-effective manner. So there's a lot of learning that can go, because realistically, not all councils, not all staff throughout the city, department heads don't always know how these things work, and so they're scared to then just kind of say, well, let's see what happens. So more of that needs to happen, and of course, COVID's going to teach us a heck of a lot more about technology than we've ever tried to figure out in the past. And so if this pushes you out of that comfort zone, guess what? Some good could come of it.
Thank you all so much for being here today. Thanks to everybody who joined us. Feel free to follow up with questions. It was a wonderful afternoon to spend with you. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your night.
Thank you.